In the late night of April 21st, 1977, three teenagers driving down Farm Street, connecting to the nearby town of Dover, Massachusetts, unintentionally stumbled upon a mysterious creature standing on all fours on the side of the road. At first, they thought what they were witnessing was an emaciated dog abandoned outside of town. But when they brought the car closer to get a better look, their headlights illuminated a creature they had never expected to see. The driver saw it for only an instant as the car drove past, but he knew it was no animal. Join me as we comb the woods of Massachusetts, looking for the Dover Demon. Welcome everyone to Moonlight Lore. I'm your host, Jordan Hopkins. In today's episode, we're investigating a creature many people have heard of, but most know very little about it, as it had only been seen for a short period of time. Today we're talking about the Dover Demon and his short appearance outside the town of Dover, Massachusetts in 1977. The story begins on a small country road at around 10:30 at night when three 17-year-old boys, Bill Bartlett as the driver, Mike Mazoka, and Andy Brody as passengers, were driving their car back into the town of Dover. While the three were talking and traveling, Bill, keeping his eyes on the road and where he was going, notices some sort of creature walking on the side of the road on top of a low wall of stones. At first, thinking it might just be some kind of animal, as they were driving through the wooded area just outside of town, he assumed it to be possibly some dog who had strayed too far from home, or some other woodland animal. But as he drove the car closer down the road towards it, his headlights, just for a second, shone on the creature just as they went around a bend. What he saw as the headlights hit the creature was its odd figure making its way along the wall using its long fingers to curl around and grasp the rocks. The lights must have surprised it, because it wasn't looking in their direction before. Bill said as the headlights hit it, it turned its head and stared back at them with large, glassy, lidless eyes, illuminating an orange hue from the headlights. Its head was very large compared to the rest of its body, and Bill would later compare it to being similar to the size and shape of a watermelon resting on top of a very thin neck. The rest of its body was very thin as well, with long lanky arms and legs connecting overly large hands and feet. Bill also recalls the skin to have been completely hairless, and that it had a very pale color to it as it stood up on 2 feet at a height of around 4 feet tall. Unfortunately, only Bill was observant enough to have witnessed the creature as the car drove past, and unfortunately before he could even comprehend what he had seen, the creature had vanished into the dark woods. Understandably a bit shook up, Bill drops his friends off at their homes and he heads to his, where he meets his father, who notices Bill's upset demeanor. To which then Bill relays what he had seen on the road earlier that night, and stirs in his room as he is unable to understand what he had witnessed. Even though Bill's friends, Mike and Andy, didn't see the Dover Demon on their drive, doesn't mean Bill was the only one to have seen it that night. About 2 hours later, at around midnight, a 15-year-old boy named John Baxter had left his girlfriend's house and was walking home. While walking in a wooded area somewhere along Miller Hill Road, which is a dead-end road that connects up to Farm Street, he reports that he had gotten within 15 feet of the Dover Demon that night as he saw it standing on the side of the road just ahead of him. And at first, John thought it might have been his friend who happened to also live on the same street, but quickly realized when he called out to him, this creature wasn't human. As John called out his friend's name thinking it was him, John says the creature suddenly took off the road and into the tree line. A little curious, John ran up to where it stood and tried watching it as it ran off. Able to get a better and longer look than Bill had earlier, John knew this was no kind of animal he had ever heard about or seen, and as he was standing there watching it, he realized the creature was standing up again, looking back at him, at which point John realized it was best to leave as quickly as he could, as he didn't know the creature's intentions. The next night, A third sighting of the Dover Demon was reported by a 15-year-old woman, Abby Brabham, who was getting a ride home from her friend, Will Tainter. As they were driving down Springdale Avenue, which again connects to Farm Street, they approached a strange figure either sitting upright or being down on all fours. She noted the strange creature was hairless and having glowing green eyes instead of the orange ones Bill had reported seeing the previous night. In total, there were only 3 reported sightings of the Dover Demon over the course of 2 nights. Then, never again. Ever since, the locals have never reported seeing the Dover Demon, even though there have been hundreds of people coming from all across the United States to learn about this creature and to search for it. Many say because of the wooded area, the creature could still be out there somewhere, but other people believe it could have been a hoax right from the very beginning. When the first and only sightings of the Dover Demon became known, the local police began an investigation into the matter. However, as they were not able to find the demon or any evidence of it being anywhere, they had to heavily rely on the testimonies of those 3 teenagers who had witnessed it. Each of the teens, Bill, John, and Abby, were brought in individually for questioning by the police, where the 3 would go on to describe in detail what they had seen. And one after another, the teens described the demon the same way, giving clue that they all definitely had seen the same creature. The police, however, were skeptical, as they were on the scenes of the sightings after their respective reportings, and they claimed to have discovering nothing out of the ordinary. No traces of any kind of monster or space alien that couldn't have been just chalked up to a normal animal sighting. With this skepticism in their minds, the police had the teens turn in drawings of the creature. Bill had already drawn his version of the creature in his bedroom the night he had seen it to keep the image fresh as possible in his mind, and John and Abby drew theirs for the investigators as well, and all 3 drawings were eerily similar. A short, scrawny creature with large glowing eyes and large bulbous head. And now, as it tends to do in small towns, word spread like wildfire, and soon the police were getting calls from concerned citizens and the press asking on what was going on. In an official statement given to the press by the police, they state the creature reported by the teenagers were probably nothing more than a school vacation hoax, as no evidence has been given or found aside from the testimony of the 3 teens. But the news was out now, and the 3 teens became sort of famous for a short time, as everyone wanted to know what they had seen those nights, whether it be out of curiosity or desire to prove them wrong. Either way, and whether they liked it or not, the story of the Dover Demon would go on to follow these 3 throughout the rest of their lives. Decades later, and the memory of the night is still fresh in the mind of Bill Bartlett, as he was interviewed by a correspondent for the Boston Globe News in October of 2006. According to their website, when asked if he remembered and knew if what he had seen that night was real or not, Bill responded saying, "I have no idea what it was, but I know I saw something." At the time of the interview, Bill was in his mid-40s, still holding firm on what had happened that night in 1977 had truly happened. Even though Bill had made a career out of being an artist, he says it's still a little embarrassing having his name mainly known for what happened back when he was just a teenager all those years ago. Bill is quoted saying, "It's a thing that has followed me for years. Not the creature, but the story. Sometimes I dread every Halloween, getting calls about it." The details regarding the incident of when he first saw the demon has stayed locked inside Bill's mind for decades still, and to this day, when asked about what he had seen, he is able to recall it quite vividly. And to Bill's credit, he does mention in his interview that he does wish he had made it up, saying, "This was no prank, and I wasn't trying to be funny. People who know me know I didn't make this up. And I really do wish I had made it up. I might have profited from it. It's a great story, but I wish the creature was seen again, so everyone would know that it was true." Whatever Bill had seen that night, the memory of it has and probably never will leave him, as much as he might want it to. And I do have empathy for him. In his interview, he mentions he's a little embarrassed about being tied to the story, because he knows people who are typically tied in cryptozoology or paranormal hunting are usually looked down upon by other scientific communities, as well as many in the general public. Even though there are thousands of people who would support him, Bill seems to have wanted to distance himself from the story ever since it had happened that night, back in 1977. So now that we've heard the story and of the people involved, let's get into our investigation portion of the episode. Many people have offered theories of what the creature might have been throughout the years, but frankly, no one has really been able to come up with much of a satisfying answer. Many of the skeptics looking into this case have guessed the explanation is as simple as a baby moose. However, there are quite a few issues with this theory I would like to address. Majority of the time, the breeding season for moose are around mid-September to October, and the calf is born sometime during the spring. Now yes, a calf could be close to similar size possibly to what the Dover demon was thought to be, but out of all the big game animals, moose grow and gain weight the fastest. Just after a couple days of being born, a calf can begin to gain half a kilogram every day. This would mean a cow and a bull would have had to have breed outside of season in possibly early August of the year before, for a small calf to have been on the road in April of 1977, and it would have had to only have been a couple of days old. A big thing though, is typically after giving birth to their calf, cows go into hiding with the calf in order to protect it from predators. For a calf to be out on the road at this time and without its mother would have been extremely unlikely. And to really drive home the fact that it was very unlikely for it to not be a moose calf, moose are not prevalent in the area of Dover, Massachusetts, with only 2 being spotted in 1977 and in the western part of the state far away from Dover. With this, and the very big fact that moose don't have long spindly fingers or giant glowing orange or green eyes or any other feature the same as the Dover demon, I believe it's very safe to say this theory is not one we could lay our cards on. Another theory is that the Dover demon is actually a gray, a species of extraterrestrial alien similar to the ones claimed to have been spotted at the 1947 Roswell UFO incident and the Barney and Betty Hill alien abduction incident in 1961. If we compare the sightings of the creature at Dover to the one seen at Roswell and by Barney and Betty, we see striking similarities to the features of the creature. The sighting at Roswell and the Betty and Barney Hill sighting and the Dover demon sightings all say that the creatures had large roundish heads with giant eyes, scrawny humanoid bodies with long appendages and long fingers. And their names, the Greys, are specifically given to them because of their grayish, hairless, and textured pale skin, similar to that of what the Dover demon was claimed to have looked like. With these features being so similar, I would easily entertain the fact that the Dover demon could have been a gray alien. However, UFOologists at the time reported and received no reports of any UFO activity in the skies above Dover in April of 1977. This also, however, does not mean there wasn't any activity at all. The sky is a very large canvas to cover in 1977, so it could have been possible a craft might have been able to slip by unnoticed. But now the last theory I want to cover is the fact that Dover demon could have been some form of species related to the little folk from legends all around the world, but one in particular I found to be quite convincing was the Managishi of Cree folklore. These little folk in Native American folklore are told to have large bulbous heads with no nose, very thin, with long lanky arms and legs. It's said these creatures are known to be quite the trickster, oftentimes making their sole goal to mess with the lives of humans. It is also quite interesting to note that they are known to live between the rocks nearby bodies of water, and if we look back at the story of when Bill Bartlett first saw the creature on the side of the road, it was standing or walking on all fours, on top of a wall of stone. Lauren Coleman, a cryptozoologist who has been a reputable source and presence in the paranormal, cryptic, and supernatural scene for decades, went to Dover in 1977 to do his own investigation of the creature when he had first caught wind of it. This is actually the time when the Dover demon had gotten its name, by Coleman during his investigation. I would also like to mention, for most of the information I found for this episode was thanks to Lauren's work regarding the demon. A year later after his investigation, Lauren Coleman, along with Jerome Clark, another author dedicated to UFO sightings, wrote and released their book called Creatures of the Outer Edge, introducing the Dover demon to the world. More recently, in 2013, Coleman would go on to write the book Monsters of Massachusetts, Mysterious Creatures in the Bay State, which focus a great deal about the Dover demon. But during his initial investigation of the demon, Coleman wasn't able to come up with much that wasn't already known. He of course interviewed the 3 teenagers and the officers who had been at the scenes, and Coleman and his team did go out in the field to study the terrain and look for traces of the demon, but unfortunately, nothing turned up. Decades after his initial investigation in Dover, Coleman's friend, Walt Webb, who worked as the assistant director of the Boston Museum of Science Planetarium, sent Coleman a copy of the original newspaper article back from 1977 regarding the incident. In this copy, it tells of a story very few have heard of before, regarding of mysterious strange men visiting the town, dressed all in black. It could have just been a coincidence, Coleman says, but suspects it to mean more. He reports that only 2 months to the day of the initial first sighting by Bartlett, 2 men in black appeared at the Dover house looking for Coleman, who by that time had finished his investigation and moved on. Now, I don't believe I've mentioned the Dover house before yet, so just to quickly clear it up, the Dover house at the time was a group home in Dover for emotionally disturbed boys, serving as a residential branch of the treatment center. I'm not quite sure if it's still a boys' school, but regardless of what it was or what it might be now, it's not our main focus right now. What I'm most interested in is the visit there by the men in black. A woman at the school answered the door, where she was met by 2 large men wearing black leather jackets and white motorcycle helmets. According to the woman, they asked to meet with Coleman, but since he wasn't there anymore, she simply gave them his address to contact him. But according to Coleman, they never did. And as the 2 were standing in the doorway, the woman noticed they had hardly moved, standing perfectly erect with both of their arms by their sides and speaking in a monotoned voice. And when asked who they were, they only identified themselves as investigators for National Geographic. Coleman has stated, even though this encounter could have been a real visit from the mysterious men in black, he also states it could have easily have been X-File fans who just went a little overboard a bit in trying to track him down. I don't know what exactly Bill Bartlett, John Baxter, or Abby Bramham saw that night for sure. It could have been a number of things, or it might not have been anything at all. Many people still stand firm the 3 had just made it up, but if this were the case, surely one of the 3 would have come clean by now, over 40 years later. I believe in their story, however. You may have noticed in my past episodes I try to find some possible scientific explanation that could be the case, but in this particular case, I simply don't know. I do believe they saw something though, but whatever they saw, I can't say for certain. But I suppose if I had to choose one, I would think it would have been a sighting of a gray alien. The similarities are incredibly similar, and honestly I can't think how it could have been a moose or a possible little folk sighting. From what I have read, all 3 witnesses were all supported by people who knew them, saying they were respectable and trustworthy people, and they continue to be to this day. It's important to remember the people behind these stories are still people. 3 teenagers unwillingly encountered something and instantly were entangled in the story, bound to it for the rest of their lives. I believe with any story like this, regardless of how you feel about it, everyone needs to show a level of respect towards those involved, as they did not ask for this to take place and are still human beings just trying to live their lives as normally as possible. While investigating, researching, and recording these sorts of strange events or paranormal activities, we all must remember to keep an open mind during the process, simply because this is the only way we'll ever be able to solve future mysteries, like the one of the Dover Demon. Hey there everyone, I just wanted to jump in at the end of the episode to let you all know that Moonlight Lore has an Instagram page where I've been and will continue to post pictures of and relating to the specific episodes talked about on the podcast. If you're interested, feel free to give me a follow on there at Moonlight Lore Podcast. And if you're wondering how you could help support and grow the podcast, simply by listening does just that. But if you want to go even further, leaving a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening to this on, and by sharing this podcast with your friends and family who you think might be interested, would also help immensely. I appreciate all of you for listening to Moonlight Lore, so thank you, and I hope you've been enjoying it. Take care and stay safe.